As we continue with After Hours.
You know, as the story goes, the nurse, we'll call her Susie in this case, looked at the patient and asked, what if you had a broken arm? What if you'd been diagnosed with cancer or heart disease? Would you try and shrug it off? Would you try and grind it out? Or would you go to a doctor and get help? They looked at each other a little bit more, and the patient stared back and said, yeah. The patient was me. About a year ago. That was my aha moment, that conversation. That got me turned in the right direction. Now, it wasn't straight up, like that spiral staircase there. There were some turns to it, there was layers to it. Getting help cost me time with my family, cost me time here. That hurt, losing your family for days. But a conversation that I had long avoided had occurred, and I got healthy. Not always perfect, not every day is rosy, but so much better. And you look back now and say, why didn't I do it sooner? So today, let's talk. Because if you don't, nobody will ever hear you.
Well, that was our colleague Darren Millard bravely opening Scotiabank Wednesday night hockey this week on Bell Let's Talk Day. We're pleased to have with us now former Canuck goaltender and now radio analyst Corey Hirsch, who has joined the front lines of the battle against the stigma often attached to mental health. What did Darren's opening represent to you?
It was absolutely remarkable, brave. I know what it's like when you get that moment where you want to share your story, but it's terrifying because you don't know what's going to happen after, but you just know that you need to share your story to help, and there's a huge momentum shift. And Darren, I'm just so proud of him. It's such a brave moment, and even for myself, I found out that afterwards, I thought I'd be swinging a hammer the rest of my life. I thought I'd be shunned from society, but I needed to share my story. And for Darren, so many more opportunities opened up for me. It's just, I'm so proud of him. It's so remarkable.
So you joined the battle in a big way with a compelling article on the Players Tribune website just about a year ago in which you held nothing back about your struggle that was eventually diagnosed as OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and how it very nearly cost you your life. Back then, in the mid-90s, when you were struggling and didn't know what was going on, could you ever have imagined the kind of discussions we're having about mental health challenges today and how open they are?
I'm absolutely blown away with the momentum shift that we've seen in the last few years. We're seeing players come out, we're seeing celebrities come out, and lots of people just talking. And back then, I mean, I remember laying in my bed, just not even being able to really function, barely being able to go to practice. And I couldn't ever imagine that this day would come, that we'd be able to talk openly and that there'd be help and a huge momentum shift in mental health.
In '94, Corey, you really had it all. Outwardly, your life was perfect. You had just won a silver medal at the Olympics. You had joined the Rangers for their run to the Stanley Cup, but inwardly, it was torture for you. Share with us the story about how hard you tried and what you were prepared to do to get out of New York and get sent home to Calgary.
Yeah, no question. I was prepared to do anything. I tried to even break my own hand, and I was going to fake it at practice the next day. I called my parents to come out to try and help me out. When you have anxiety, debilitating anxiety like that and panic attacks, you'll do anything. And I thought if I just got home, everything would be okay. But it just goes to show you that if you're a professional athlete, a doctor, a lawyer, nobody's immune to mental health. We all can suffer from it at any time, and we need to be prepared, and we need to prepare our children, if it does happen to them, so that they know what to do and be able to go get help.
So April of '95, the Rangers trade you here, and for the first season, you're able to keep it together. The second season, you can't. You ask for help. You're diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and finally, you have a cause for what's ailing you, and a treatable one at that. But how much of your reaction was, I wish I had known this years earlier, which leads us to the importance of early diagnosis?
Well, and that's exactly it. I wouldn't have had to gone through it. I wouldn't have gotten to those dark places where I wanted to end my own life. If I'd have known the next day after it happened to me, when things just started to turn dark, that I could just go get help, that this is what it is, you just go get help, I would have never gotten to that place. And for me, it's so important to get it to our high schools and our communities, because the age range is between the ages of 15 and 24. Mm-hmm. And nobody told me that you could be plagued with obsessive thoughts or deep, dark depression. And if we can get that to our kids and get them early diagnosed, their chances of recovery are so much greater. But because I didn't know, I hid it, I tried to hide it, I dug a hole, and then when you go get therapy, you gotta fill that hole back in, and it's a long, arduous recovery. And early diagnosis, a lot of it is very treatable if we can get to it early. It's like any other form of health issue.
So before the diagnosis, how often did you hear from people, you're in the NHL, just suck it up and get out there?
It was more even telling myself that, right? I was trying to motivate myself, like what's wrong with you? You have everything. Why can't you just suck it up and get out there? And it was an internal battle, and there was a lot of times where people didn't understand that I was struggling just to get out of bed and get to practice. You start being late for practice, you start making excuses, anything, because you're just trying to survive day to day, and it's really hard to, when you're in that, it's really hard to separate, reality and trying to figure out, and just trying to get every day to get to practice was hard enough.
Who on your Canuck teams back then tried to understand and didn't judge you?
Yeah, there was some remarkable people. Alexander McGillney, who had some issues of his own in Buffalo with flying and that. I think he understood a little bit of the anxiety, and he really helped me out a lot. And nobody really knew what I was going through, though. I hid it, and I didn't tell anybody, but people kind of knew there was something was off. Dave Babbage was another guy, always made sure, you were with the team, that you were at meals, you were doing things. Russ Courtnall, Kirk McLean, Trevor Lynn. I had some wonderful teammates that didn't understand what was going on. And when my story came out, it was almost a form of apology to them. Like, this is why I was that way. I wasn't trying to be a bad teammate. I was just trying to get to practice every day.
One of your tweets on Wednesday addressed the stigma attached to medication. So take a moment here to do that.
There's so many stigmas, but the one for me with medication is the biggest. People are made to feel guilty, ashamed, embarrassed for having medication. Scott, I would not be here today if it wasn't for medication, and I want people to know that it's okay to get a little bit of help, that it's okay. It took the edge off for me, and it allowed me to get help and get better. And I'm medication free now. But I know if I need it, it's there. And you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to be embarrassed and ashamed. Like I said, if it wasn't for medication, I would not be here today.
As you pointed out in the Players Tribune article, obsessive compulsive disorder is far more than someone going around with some hand sanitizer, constantly washing their hands. Oh, it could be just that, but for many others, it's a lot more serious. So that's your diagnosis. How do you control it now?
Well, to me, I've had a lot of therapy, a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, lots of different things. I've met some wonderful doctors that have been able to help me. And then once you get it under control and you actually get things going, for me now, it used to be like it was screaming at me, and now for me it's a whisper. I can just bat it away. It doesn't really bother me anymore. And if I do start to have issues again, I know what to do. I know where the help is. I know exactly what I need to do, and it's so treatable. And the growth from when you get treated is remarkable, the recovery that people can make. So you just need to be able to reach out and get help and not be afraid of those thoughts. Those thoughts are what keep you from getting help.
Do you think that we've made enough advances in this discussion through things like Bell, Let's Talk, and other initiatives, that if a player went to his coach before a critical game, maybe even a Stanley Cup playoff game, and said, physically I'm not hurt, but mentally I'm really struggling, I need help, do you think the coach would take the appropriate course of action, or do you think we're still in that suck it up and get out there mindset?
Well, I think we're much more educated now. I think the coaches and the staff would take the appropriate angle. However, I think players are still reluctant to come forward. And the numbers are 20%, 1 in 5. There's 700 players in the National Hockey League. Do the math. There's 20 players on a team. There's most definitely someone on every team struggling. And for the coaching staff, they probably do the right thing, but we need the players to come forward.
Sorry we have to leave it there, Corey. Thanks a lot for your time and all the work you're doing.